Good evening, folks. This is Deb Delapiana, and this is your Factivist Report for Sunday, the 31st of July. We're closing the month in style. We're talking about Christian nationalism today, a big topic and a scary topic, if you care about democracy. Dave's not with us tonight. He's on his way back from vacation after having the first part of his vacation halted by another bout of COVID, but then he recovered and he decided to take the second part of his trip. So he's on his way back, so you're stuck with me tonight. So we're going to share the screen. So here we have it, folks. Christian nationalism, it's a big topic. I'm working on this section of the website right now. I call it Christofascism. That's a term that was coined a while ago, but Christian nationalism is probably a better term. So I'm probably going to switch it to that, but we'll see how it goes when I go back to this after this show. So this article is written by a woman named Amanda Tyler, who is a Baptist whose concern is religious liberty. And according to Amanda, and she's right, religious liberty is enshrined in the US Constitution. But we have had several, let's say, challenges to this. But today's challenge comes from Christian nationalism, which is a very anti-democratic notion. It's basically states that America is by and for Christians alone. And, you know, at its core, the principle, it says right here, this idea threatens the principle of the separation of church and state and undermines the Establishment Clause of the First Amendment. It also leads to discrimination and violence against religious minorities and the non-religious. It's also a contributing ideology in the religious rights misuse of religious liberty as a rationale for circumventing laws and regulations aimed at protecting a pluralistic democracy. So when you look at Florida, for example, right now, and that whole don't say gay thing, and you look at what they're doing there, they've started taking all the little rainbow insignias off the doors of schools. So it's no longer your safe zone for LGBTQ people. It's not safe for students any longer. That's essentially the message they're giving you. You know, I don't want to hear the nonsense that there's no discrimination against gay children. That's bullshit. I went through school myself and I know it exists, and I know it exists even today. The other thing they have stopped doing is showing videos about harassment and bullying. So they're essentially basically taking all kinds of protections away from people who don't fit the mold. The problem with Christian nationalism is that it intersects with other areas of the fanatical right wing. It intersects with the radical anti-abortion movement. It intersects with people who don't believe that Islamic people belong in this country. It is a very dangerous and scary prospect. And, you know, the Supreme Court right now, as it sits, is poised to be very friendly to those who believe in Christian nationalism. The three judges that were appointed by Donald Trump are all ultra-conservative Catholics, all members of Opus Dei, which, you know, doesn't dictate that they use their religious beliefs in their workplace, but it encourages them to do so. And you'll see we're getting a little further along. I really believe that they have. But, you know, we're still early into the 6-3 majority for the ultra conservatives, and I think it doesn't bode well based on what we've seen so far. There's plenty of other people who believe that Christian nationalism isn't okay. And these people are also religious entities. They're religious people. The United Methodist Church believes that Christian nationalism is a danger. And it not only threatens democracy, but it threatens faith. We are a very large country, and we don't have just Christians in this country, okay? We don't have just Catholics. We don't have just fundamentalists. We have people who believe in the teachings of Islam. We have people who are Jewish, who believe in the Jewish faith. People come here because we're seen as a place where people can go and be who they actually are. We are rapidly not becoming that anymore. We are looking at, a really scary country. And it's not, if you go back now and you look at the films and stuff of the insurrection, you'll see plenty of Christian nationalist themed signs there. And as I said, I'm doing this section of the website now. Here's a picture right here on this article right here. And this, by the way, is this Christian nationalism, the January 6th insurrection. That is actually a study, and I'm going to have that so it can be downloaded. It says here, Jesus is my savior, Trump is my president on this flag. There were plenty of those kinds of signs outside and inside the Capitol. So those people who are constitutional and religious scholars, know that it was a myth that the forefathers said this was a Christian nation. In fact, they said the exact opposite. And there are a lot of quotations by many of the founding fathers that indicate that was one of their concerns, was the need to keep the church and the state, in terms of how it's governed, separate, because they knew that democracy was how do you say this without sounding like an idiot, is a fragile item. This is an experiment, actually. This is called the democratic experiment, what we have in America. I'm not sure many other countries have entirely this kind of government. And this is the kind of government that can easily be damaged by shit like this. And I do mean shit. There's a great book here. I actually ordered it. It's called The Flag and the Cross, White Christian Nationalism and the Threat to American Democracy. So these people, this whole Christian nationalism thing, it also intersects, as I said, with the radical anti-abortionists and the Islamophobes. But the religious rights roots are not in Roe v. Wade. That is a myth. The religious rights roots are in racism. This was an issue even when, in the early days when Black people were fighting for their rights. This is something that will encompass just about everything that's different from what white religious people want. They really do believe that this country was made just for white religious people, people of European descent who are white Christians. We have a lot of stuff going on, both online and off. The Proud Boys, the big lie, that the big lie, some of the stuff that was being, spouted off by Trump was that the Democrats were letting in all of these people from other countries to vote and, take over the country. They're here to replace the white man. This is all part and parcel of this thing. And it has, been bastardized by people who are just far-right zealots and bigots and racists and homophobes and transphobes. it is their way of, purifying America. That's really what we have going on here. This is a really excellent article. I posted it a few times. The Proud Boys called their channel on Telegram the Western chauvinists. They
also call themselves purebloods, and they try and play it off like it has another meaning, but that's Nazi ideology there.
There is, it is exactly just exactly what that is. And I'm gonna bring that up again a little further on. But this is an article. If I were, I know most people don't like to read, but I love reading. This is how I get my information. If I were to spend any time with any article, I would spend it on this one first. We have a lot of, theories about what Christian nationalism is, but the one thing that everybody seems to be together on is that it is all about God's will and what God intended for the United States to have in the world. Our experience, it's sort of like, American exceptionalism, only it's called Christian nationalism. This was our way of the world to these people. God's gun and Trump, God guns and Trump. Nowhere in the freaking literature does anybody talk about guns. But if you look at, the T-shirt, we stand for the flag and kneel for the cross, there are always automatic weapons in there because, the inference is that the military is involved. But guns are a big thing in this country now, and it's getting bigger by the day. Not only did the Supreme Court just issue a ruling on prayer before they went on vacation, but they also went in and basically overturned New York's gun law. And that again has been addressed by the state of New York. Kathy Hochul did a great job, not backing down to the Supreme Court. But, there is a belief in this country by the Christian nationalists that we are a pure race dedicated to God and Christian causes. And, everybody says it. If you read all of these views that I put in here, there's a lot of different ones. So I'm not going to read them all off to you. I'm just trying to show you that even religious people believe this is dangerous for the most part. They exclude people from the conversation. They exclude people from being able to live their lives the way they want to live their lives. And that is not what America is all about. At the end of the day, that is not what America was all about. The whole reason for the American Revolution was not to be oppressed. And, here we have a group of people using this as an excuse to oppress other people. And, I don't know where people got their ideas about what Jesus was about, but I know where I got mine. I got mine because I grew up in a Catholic family, and I also went to Catholic school. And not one time, I have to say, was I ever taught by any nuns, and I had nuns all throughout my childhood, that we were here to judge other people. I did not hear that Jesus was here to judge other people. I was taught that we are all here with a free will to live the way we want, and the big guy will sort it all out at the end if there is a big guy. And there are plenty of people in this country who don't believe in any religion. I happen to be a non-practicing Catholic. I don't believe, frankly. I'm the kind of person that needs to see stuff to believe. I really believe the Bible was written as a parable, as a storytelling thing. God had nothing to do with writing it. It was written by 60 different people over hundreds of years, essentially. And now we come to the big part. Christian nationalism and how it drove the insurrection on January 6, 2021. You know, before this whole scene here with the praying at the cross, everybody with their hands on each other, with their Trump hats on, this whole thing was a central driving force, you know, behind this whole movement. Sometime in 2020, they actually had a march. And this was before the insurrection, by the way. They had this is a great publication. I actually subscribe to this. Most people, you know, it's $59 a year, but this is a really, the Atlantic has a really good look at most things that we talk about. There was a thing called the Jericho March back in 2020 that, you know, were a bunch of Christian nationalists talking about protecting election integrity. This was before the entire, you know, insurrection took place. It was held on the National Mall. You know, it should have been a warning signal, in my opinion, but it didn't turn out that way because they showed up here with Donald Trump encouraging them to do exactly what they did. And they were all out there praying, and there was a lot of guns, there were a lot of crosses, there were a lot of signs alluding to the fact that there were Christian nationals at the helm of this thing. This is actually the report that I referred to earlier. This is a 66-page report about how the Christian nationalists drove the entire event. And, you know, don't ever kid yourself that the GOP would not get in bed with these people, because quite frankly, Christians and the Christian nationalist movement, they have been in bed with them for quite some time. All of this stuff started way back with, the moral majority, Newt Gingrich, all the way back, even further back than that. This has been building and building, and they have been buying influence in politics for quite some time. You know, Kenneth Copeland is a guy, you see him on TV. I believe he is I think he's got the largest contingent of Christian nationalists that follow him. You know, literally you've seen him. I saw him on TV. I saw videos of him mocking Joe Biden's election. When you have, religious leaders doing that kind of stuff, people buy into that. Anybody who doesn't believe, I encourage everyone to take a look at the Freedom from Religious Foundation. I actually support them financially, and I am a member. This group is a group that is intent on protecting the rights of those who don't believe in any God. And we all have that right as well. You know, I love Sonia Sotomayor, by the way. If anyone's read her dissent about the prayer ruling by the Supreme Court, if you haven't, I'll put it in here anyway. I don't have it up right now, but I'll make sure I put it in. I just seeing her picture made me think about it. But we did have the Supreme Court not only weigh in on abortion and overturn a 50-year precedent, but they also weighed in on school prayer. And this is extremely dangerous. And I'll tell you why. The inference was that, this poor, woe is me football coach was not being allowed to pray at the 50-yard line. What he was actually doing at the 50-yard line was leading kids in prayer. And the reason this is dangerous is that football coaches, teachers, baseball coaches, principals of schools, they are seen as authority figures, and children of school age respond to authority figures, whether they want to or not, whether they agree or not, whether they want to pray or not. And this is undercutting everything we've talked about with the separation of church and state. For example, I will tell you now, Rick Scott, who has his 11-point plan to save America. In that plan, and we have that also, that's part of my website as well. He's, stating that prayer should be required in school. This is a slippery slope, folks. It really is. And it's got nothing to do with, being thankful for winning a football game or being thankful for losing a football game. This is bullshit. And this is a very scary prospect. Basically, it gives more weight to religion than it does to individual rights. And that's not okay. It does undercut the First Amendment's free speech clause, because when you have people in a school setting basically telling kids to stand and pray, you're taking away a right. And I just find that scary. So now the Supreme Court has ruled that it's okay for teachers to lead the classroom in prayer. Does that mean that kids who are sitting in the classroom who don't want to pray are not going to be forced to pray? I maintain that they shouldn't even have to sit there and watch it. They shouldn't have to sit there and sit through it. I think if they're going to have those kinds of rules, and those children should either be allowed to leave the room, or they should set up a room where kids who want to pray can go pray. And by the way, we're not talking about people having the right to pray in the religions of what they of the religions that they believe in. We're talking about Christian prayer only. That's what we're talking about here. You can't ever get me to believe that they're going to have
They legalized Muslim praying. They legalized, yeah.
Yeah, I mean, what do you think? You think, they're going to conduct a prayer for Christians, and they're going to, conduct a prayer for Jewish people, and then they're going to conduct a prayer for people who believe in the Islamic religion? They're not. They're talking strictly about Christianity here. That's the rub. That is the problem.
Not only that, but if you wanted to pray, you can close your eyes and pray to yourself. There is no need to involve other people's children. What this is enforcing someone else's religion on someone else's children. They don't even want you to talk about being gay around their children, yet you can lead their children in prayer. That's not right.
It isn't right. And I've been saying this all along. Religion is private. I understand that religion will always seep over into culture. I get that. Okay. I don't have a problem with that. But if you are Catholic and you want to pray, that's why you go to church. That's why people say their prayers at the foot of their bed every night. I did when I was young. My mother wanted me to have a Catholic education. She did not expect the public school system to give me that education. Okay. When she wanted me to have a Catholic education, she sent me to Catholic school. She didn't go up and demand that the public school attend to my religious needs. Okay. She sent me to Catholic school. They can send their kids to Christian religious schools. They're all over the fucking country. I hate this thing at the top here. I'm gonna say. See what we got here now. So let's talk about Florida. One of my least favorite individuals here. We have this permeating, when we start seeing this kind of stuff, you got to be nervous. So now they're training teachers to say that it was a misconception that the founders desired separation of church and state. This is how they're training their teachers. And the teachers, by the way, are in panic mode. Okay. We haven't had civics taught in school for decades. It was one of the things they got rid of so that we wouldn't understand how the government works. But now they're bringing it back, and they're bringing it back and telling teachers they should be teaching that the separation of church and state is a misconception. It is not. He's also telling teachers that religion belongs in public life, and that means across the board. That also means in politics. That is scary, and it's scary when we have this. Marjorie Taylor Greene. You know, it would be one thing if we could literally say she's just a crazy crackhead, but she's not. She is a virulent, right-wing, white supremacist, Christian nationalist. She is calling for the Republican Party to become the party of Christian nationalism. And, you know, you will note that nobody in the Republican Party, except for Adam Kinzinger, is pushing back on her. Everybody remains silent, you know, the usual suspect who remains silent about Donald Trump as well. You know, Mitch McConnell, Kevin McCarthy. Nobody says a word here. You know, according to Marjorie Taylor Greene, as soon as we start acting like the people who were voting for us, then we'll be a legitimate party. So in other words, she's believing that only Christian nationalists vote for the Republican Party. Well, you know what? They're in the minority. So why should we listen to what she's saying? By the way, here's another one of my least favorite people. She also goes, you know, goes toe-to-toe with old Nick Fuentes here. She spoke at his conference. She went right from the CPAC conference right over to his conference and spoke to them as well. You know, not without even batting an eye that she was talking to a white supremacist. He's not only a white
vote. They need their vote. That's who, this is who votes for the GOP in 2022.
Right.
They need them.
Yeah, and you know, he is an anti-Semite. You know, Jews stood in the way of the end of Roe v. Wade. He's a misogynist. And, you know, this kid, he's not a kid now, but he was at Boston University when he decided to go and join the white supremacist march in Charlottesville. And literally, he was driven out by the students. He left BU after that. Lauren Boebert, she's tired of all this separation of church and state junk. She spoke at a religious service in Colorado. And she told worshipers, and I'm quoting her directly, the church is supposed to direct the government. The government is not supposed to direct the church. That is not how our founding fathers intended it. Then she said, I'm tired of the separation of church and state junk. That's not in the Constitution. It was in a stinking letter, and it means nothing like what they say it does. The stinking letter was written by Thomas Jefferson, by the way.
They just take whatever they want that'll help push their narrative, and they throw away everything else.
Yep.
They just make up whatever lie they want to say at the moment.
So there was a PolitiFact check done on this statement. And it came out as a, you know, false, totally false. So the First Amendment reads in part that Congress shall make no law respecting an establishment of religion. It's known as the Establishment Clause. And scholars generally agree it points to the founders' desire to avoid the establishment of a national church. The words separation of church and state are drawn from a metaphor Thomas Jefferson used in a letter to describe the intent of the Establishment Clause. And experts have said that while the application of the Establishment Clause has been contested for years, the founding fathers did not intend it to allow a church to, quote, direct the government. And by the way, all of these articles, you can click at the bottom. These are all of the sources that were used to fact check her, okay? And it does include the letter from Thomas Jefferson. So let's talk about people from the GOP currently running for office. Probably the most virulently Christian nationalist human being running is Doug Mastriano. He's running for the governor of Pennsylvania. And he is a guy who has said that the separation of church and state is basically nonsense. So he said that, God uses the foolish to confound the wise. And he said that Pennsylvania's freedoms would be snatched away if his Democratic opponent wins in November. And he also, talks about the election in religious terms. He goes, let's choose this day to serve the Lord. He is a state senator right now. He's a retired Army colonel. And he is honestly right on board with the guy from Gab. Okay. Andrew Torba, who is the CEO of Gab, believes that the conservative movement is exclusively Christian. And Doug Mastriano, he gave Gab $5,000 in April of 2022 for advertising consulting. And he got taken to the woodshed for that. So he basically gave up Gab, but he's still a Christo-fascist, according to most sources. He has not stopped talking the way he talks. The head of Gab, Andrew Torba, he said, we don't want people who are atheists. We don't want people who are Jewish. We don't want people who are, non-believers, agnostic, whatever. This is an explicitly Christian movement because this is an explicitly Christian country. That is pure and utter bullshit. So in other words, when you take religion and you radicalize it, it eliminates everybody in this country that isn't white and Christian. That's essentially what's going on here. This guy's all over the place because he's literally the worst of all of them. He's leading the charge. He's just not stopping. He is everywhere. He is, make American Christian again. He's just virulent and it's scary. It says right here, he has led rallies against mask mandates and other public health protocols, which he has characterized as the governor's autocratic control over our lives. He's been a leader of the Stop the Steal campaign. He claims that he spoke to Donald Trump at least 15 times between the 2020 election and the insurrection. He was at the insurrection. And yes, he has been endorsed by Donald Trump for governor. Here he is again. He's on fire, and I can't imagine anybody voting for this guy, but I'm sure that they will. I'm sure the conservatives will. Let me put this in stark terms. I pray to God that the Democrat wins. So he insists that, when it became violent, he left, but there's evidence that he went inside. And the Democrats are saying, and I believe the Democrats should make an issue of this during the campaign. He's saying that they're saying that he did breach the police lines, and if he's got proof otherwise, he should show it, because apparently there are videos that show that he did breach the lines. There's more. He's not the only guy. This guy here, who looks an awful lot like Nicholas Fuentes, but he's not. This is Joe Kent, and he is running in Washington State against U.S. Rep. Jamie Herrera Butler of Washington, who voted to impeach Trump, by the way. So totally out of favor. But he is courted prominent white nationalists. He's posed for photographs with a media personality who has described Adolf Hitler as a, quote, complicated historical figure who many people misunderstand. He's also a former Green Beret, and he served in several deployments, and he also served in the CIA. He is also tied to members of Christian nationalist movements. So essentially, I'm going to close with this one. A Field Guide to Christo-Fascism. This is a pretty good piece. It's on Substack, and it's written by Paul Bowers, but it gives you basically kind of a history of where it came from. And there we see, see this guy here? He doesn't give a shit about the Bible. This was a photo op, okay? But many people out there now that we talk about Ralph Freedom, the Faith and Freedom Coalition. There's a lot of people out there. These guys are all behind this. They have been behind this march to the far right for quite some time. It's been something that I've been following since, I don't know, I started looking at this way back even before Michelle Bachmann was in. She was what I considered to be a dominionist at the time. And that's still a very real scary thing, where, religion permeates all of government. They're out there, and they're trying to make headway into the political arena, and they're trying to make headway into just exactly who can function in this country and who's not allowed. And I find this to be probably one of the scariest things I've ever encountered, is just how fast. It's almost like it took all of this time to get to this point. But once Donald Trump, he became the perfect enabler, to push us right to the precipice of falling into, complete and total fascism. I can't see how people aren't alarmed by what they're seeing here. And I would urge everybody it all starts with knowledge, and it all starts with educating yourself. And it just seems to me that people don't take this portion of the program seriously, but they should. This is, in my opinion, the single biggest threat we have to democracy in this country is the Christian nationalist movement, because they are at the heart of all of this. I'll never forget, Sheldon Adelson was the guy who, funded Trump in his first run. And I remember his wife, who actually was the woman who controlled the purse strings, saying that she believed there should be a book of Trump in the Bible. That's fucking sick. I just can't even imagine that. But that's where we are, folks. We should be very concerned about this moving forward. We should also be very concerned about moving forward with the Supreme Court. This is a scary prospect. I was at one point totally against expansion of the court. I am no longer against that. I think it's totally out of balance right now. It's never been this far out of balance. And it has never been this far out of balance with an ineffective leader. And John Roberts has basically lost control of his Supreme Court. He is the big kahuna of the court. And I now also believe, and I don't know where this investigation is, I now also believe that the leak of the Roe v. Wade decision was done purposely by an ultra-conservative on the court for the purpose of disrobing Roberts' control, because I really don't believe Roberts wanted to, at the end of the day, overturn Roe v. Wade. He ended up voting with them, but that's because he also doesn't want to be seen as a loser. That's part of the problem here. So instead of, putting the needs of the people first. They put themselves first is essentially what I'm saying. So I think we need to understand that I'm not sure who has control of the court right now or if anybody does, but I would say right now, the control of the Supreme Court is in the hands of Neil Gorsuch, Brett Kavanaugh, and Amy Coney Barrett. And I think our sole voice of reason right now is Sonia Sotomayor. She's kind of filling the need or the role of Ruth Bader Ginsburg. And we'll see how the newest Supreme Court justice does when she's finally on board. But I also don't believe that Clarence Thomas should be on the Supreme Court right now, given what we know about his wife, but we'll have to see where that goes. So I'm going to end this conversation, and we will have this up for you tomorrow morning, and we'll talk later. Have a good night.